Whoa, have you guys seen this food safety thing happening in South Africa?
Yeah.
I mean, over 20 kids dead. It's scary. Like, how does something like this even happen these days?
Yeah, it's really tragic. And the
Yeah.
more you dig into it, the weirder it gets, you know?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to try to do today, right? Deep dive into this whole thing.
Exactly.
We found this news clip. It's from ENCA, and it's an interview with the health minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I saw that.
I got to be honest. Watching that, it left me with more questions than answers. Like, way
I
more.
hear you. A lot to unpack there.
So, okay, right off the bat, the minister saying he had no idea about other kids potentially dying from the same thing
Yeah.
before this. Like, what?
That's the part that really jumps out at you, isn't it? I mean, you'd think, health minister, right, he's got to be on top of these things, especially when kids are dying.
Yeah, like, wouldn't you be all over that, trying to figure out if there's a pattern or something? It's just strange.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets even more, I don't know, bizarre when he says he hasn't even seen the toxicology reports from those earlier deaths.
Hold on, wait. He doesn't even have the reports.
That's what he says in the interview.
But how? Wouldn't those be, like, priority number one?
You'd think so, right? Those reports could have so much valuable information.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, I mean, they could tell you what actually caused the deaths if it was the same thing in each case. Maybe even point to a specific source, like a contaminated food or something.
So without them, they're basically flying blind.
Pretty much.
Okay, so let's try to give them the benefit of the doubt for a second. Maybe those reports take a while to process, there's procedures and all that.
Right.
Plus, he did say they're doing investigations, like epidemiological mapping. What even is that?
So epidemiological mapping, that's basically like detective work. They're tracking the outbreak, trying to see where it started, where it spread, looking for connections between the cases.
Oh, like a disease map?
Exactly. And then there's these oral postmortems.
What in the world is an oral postmortem?
They talk to the families, friends, anyone who was with the kids in their last days. What did they eat? Where did they go? Trying to piece together any possible exposures.
So it's like, instead of examining the body, they're examining the kid's life, right?
Exactly. It can be really helpful, especially in cases where, maybe a standard autopsy doesn't give you all the answers.
Okay, so yeah, investigations take time. I get that. But still, he's saying a full week before they have any answers. That feels like forever when we're talking about kids dying. And get this, the news clip, it mentions that experts have been warning about a crisis with these so-called street pesticides since, like, 2010. This isn't some new thing. It's been going on for over a decade.
Yeah, and that's the really disturbing part. This didn't just pop up out of nowhere.
So what are these street pesticides anyway?
Basically, they're pesticides that are sold illegally, like on the black market,
Yeah.
They're often mislabeled, nobody's checking what's really in them, no regulation.
Oh, so you're saying they could have anything in them?
Could be anything. And they're not going through any of the safety protocols that regular pesticides have to go through.
And this has been going on for how long?
Like you said, over a decade. Experts have been sounding the alarm for years.
So why hasn't anyone done anything about it?
That's a good question, isn't it? One we need to ask. It's just mind-boggling. And what makes it even worse is that these pesticides, they can easily end up contaminating the food supply.
You mean like the food these kids were eating?
Possibly, yeah.
I remember reading something about organophosphates being in pesticides. What are those exactly? Why are they so dangerous?
Organophosphates, they're a type of insecticide, really potent. And they work by basically attacking the nervous system.
Attacking the nervous system.
Yeah, they disrupt the signals that control, your muscles, your breathing, even your heart.
So like poisoning.
In a way, yeah. And the effects can be really severe. Nausea, vomiting, seizures, even death.
That's terrifying.
And the thing is, you can't always tell if food's been contaminated. It might look and smell perfectly fine.
So it's like Russian roulette. You never know what you're getting.
It's a scary thought.
Watching that news clip, you can just feel the tension, The interviewer's really pushing the minister for answers, especially about what people should be doing to protect themselves. But he just keeps saying, we'll give you direction. Vague promises, no specifics.
That's the other problem here, right? The lack of clear communication. In a situation like this, people need information. They need to know what to do, how to stay safe. And when the government's not being transparent, it just creates more fear and panic.
I can't even imagine what those parents in South Africa are going through right now. It's just heartbreaking.
It really is. And, this whole crisis, it really points to some bigger issues, like the need for stronger food safety regulations, more accountability from the government.
Yeah, like how did this problem go unchecked for so long?
And then there's the whole issue of pesticides in general. What are the long-term consequences of using these
Yeah,
chemicals?
are we just trading one problem for another?
That's something to think about for sure.
So, okay, let's try to wrap this up. What have we learned here? We've got a health minister who claims he didn't know kids were dying, potentially from this same thing. We've got missing toxicology reports, and we've got this whole issue with street pesticides that's been going on for over a decade. It's a lot, man.
It is. It's a lot to process, and we're still waiting on a lot of answers.
But in the meantime, what can people do? I mean, you can't just sit around and wait for the government to figure things out.
You're right. So until we know more, I think it's important to be extra careful. Wash all your fruits and vegetables really well. Make sure you're cooking food thoroughly.
And don't eat anything that looks or smells suspicious, right?
Exactly. Trust your gut.
Man, this whole thing is a real eye-opener. Makes you realize that sometimes the most important knowledge isn't found in a textbook. It's about understanding what happens in the real world when things go wrong. It makes you think, doesn't it? What can individuals do right now to be as safe as possible? We've only scratched the surface here, and it's clear we need to keep digging for answers. There's a lot more to uncover about this food safety crisis in South Africa. This deep dive has been heavy, but honestly, this stuff matters.